Did JonBenet wet the bed?
Yeah, I mean, did she wet the bed at 6? I don't remember. Maybe. I definitely remember, like, her and me, like, wetting the bed maybe a couple times a week, 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, it's, I think every kid does that, and you just have to, like, it'd be kind of embarrassing, but parents would just clean it up.
Well, actually, it wasn't parents cleaning it up, it was the housekeeper, for the most part, cleaning it up, which is also the reason why I think the Patsy did it theory is flawed, because Patsy wasn't really the one dealing with the bedwetting, it was the housekeeper. Isn't it interesting that Burke volunteers, he asks rhetorically, did she do it at 6?
Did she wet the bed at 6? I don't remember.
Now, you may remember when we dealt with the Netflix series, Carol McKinley, one of the reporters, one of the most prominent reporters covering the JonBenet Ramsey case, she went on to write an article just saying, kind of fact-checking the series and saying, well, something that seemed a little bit of a contradiction was, on the one hand, Lou Smith saying, look, these sheets look completely clean, and an anonymous source telling her, I guess law enforcement, saying that the smell of ammonia was so strong in those sheets it could kind of knock you out, and hence I made the video smell no evil ? But in this area where Burke could be an important witness, he does say that JonBenet is wetting the bed a lot, but he sort of counters that by saying that he can't remember if she did it when she was 6 years old in the last year of her life. Is that credible? Is that believable? Is that reasonable?
Did you witness anything that night that over the last 20 years you have kept a secret?
No. I don't know anything more than what everybody else already knows.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. So we're going to return to Dr. Beuf. We've been talking about him. He's a peripheral character in a way, but perhaps he should be more central to the story. Just a few days ago, we asked the question, are JonBenet's 33 visits to the doctor in 3 years cause for concern? That wasn't really brought up in the interview with Burke, was it? And I can't help wondering what the grand jury made of this, because we know for a fact, we know Dr. Beuf was called to testify before the grand jury. He was one of several witnesses. And so when he spoke to them, and I'm sure it came up, how many times did JonBenet come and see you? And what is it about? And was it just about sinusitis and all that kind of thing? What did they make of these injuries? And did they get to see photographs of that scar on JonBenet's face? Now, in isolation, the 33 visits to the doctor in 3 years is bad enough. But if you add to that the bedwetting, not just JonBenet, but an almost 10-year-old brother as well, and he admits it in this little clip with Dr. Phil, well, then it seems to be a case of not just a physically unhealthy child, but potentially a psychologically unhealthy child. And I think JonBenet, according to the housekeeper, had trouble, certainly at certain phases, sleeping. And maybe you could say, well, a lot of children go through that. But if you look at her bed in the final crime scene photos, does that look like the bedroom or the bed of someone who's sleeping soundly? And we're going to deal with another witness, another expert testimony, Holly Smith, who talks about going into the room. This is someone who is an expert in a particular area and what she thought when she went into that bedroom. Look out for that. Now, did they know that JonBenet's first dog, Jacques, got sick and was exchanged for another dog? I mean, the grand jury, right? So it's not just dealing with the visits, the not very healthy child going to the doctor many times, but even a dog in their care got sick and was ultimately exchanged for another dog. And I know this isn't very scientific, but if you look at JonBenet's bed and her bedroom and the kitchen and the basement, the Ramsey house seems kind of dysfunctional for these posh folks. there are 2-day-old gingerbread houses from the 23rd of December still lying around, and a bowl with pineapple and milk still in it. That's on the day after Christmas, when the Ramseys were supposed to leave and go to Charlevoix. Now, if you accept that John broke the basement window in the summer and it remained broken for 6 months, sufficient for an intruder to gain access, that also tells you about the state of neglect regarding the house. And remember the wine cellar, dark, a light bulb practically hanging on a wire, a wooden latch that's securing the door, white mold covering the floor. These are millionaires. And so one's got to wonder, is there anything to this? The house that's kind of disheveled, the kitchen that's got day-old food lying in it, the dog that gets sick, JonBenet that is bedwetting in addition to these visits to the doctor, her brother as well. Is there anything more to this? And again, I can't help thinking about this through the evidence from the grand jury that we're not privy to. We just don't know what they heard. And it's not something they heard over 1 day or 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month. It's evidence they heard over 13 months. And so what did the grand jury make of this? What did they make of Dr. Beuf's testimony? What did he tell them? And I mean, aren't we missing something here? You know, Burke is asked about bedwetting. Isn't something missing from that conversation? And when Burke says, you know, there's nothing else that you guys need to know, there's nothing else that's out there. But I mean, isn't there something else beyond bedwetting? Now, have a look at this true bill. You know, we know what the grand jury thought because they voted. We know how they voted, and we know what the language is, certainly in one of those true bills. And so one's got to wonder, did any of those true bills reflect an opinion on the 33 visits in 3 years? Did any of the true bills sort of integrate that aspect into the language of the true bill? You know, the true bills accused both of JonBenet's parents of, think of these words, permitting their child, allowing their child to be unreasonably placed in a situation. Think about those words in the 33 visits to the doctor in 3 years. To be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of injury to the child's health. And that is stated separately. There's a threat not only to her health, but also to her life. And if there's an ongoing threat to one's health, it eventually can become a threat to one's life. I mean, it's, you know, I'd always talk about if an accident is waiting to happen, it's not an accident. A threat to one's health, you know, you're not going to say, well, a threat to one's life is unanticipated. And so 33 doctor's visits in 3 years, it sounds unreasonable. Doesn't that sound like a situation? And those are the words of the true bill, that JonBenet was unreasonably placed in a situation. And the difference here with a child compared to an adult is an adult can place themselves in that situation, and that's fine. Well, it's not really fine, but it's their responsibility. But an adult allowing a child to be placed in a situation where they are getting sick all the time, who is responsible for that? Not the child, somebody else. And so maybe all of this flowed out of Patsy getting stage 4 ovarian cancer. And if that's the case, we can be compassionate, we can to some extent understand how this could happen. You know, and we know that Patsy's cancer likely is the starting line of that 3-year period we're talking about. And we can understand that Patsy would have been drained, exhausted, you know, running out of a lot of resources, not only physical but psychological. But there's something else that seems to be missing from Dr. Beuf's interviews. I haven't found it anywhere. I haven't found any admissions about it, or for that matter, denials in any of his interviews. And it also doesn't come up, as far as I know, anywhere in the interviews with Dr. Phil, where Dr. Phil interviews Burke. And he's a psychologist. And yet the police seem to be quite certain on this particular topic. They even use the word scatological. You know, it seems to be part of the Ramsey narrative right up until Christmas Day. What is scatological behavior? Well, have a look. It has to do with potentially trauma. Think about the trauma of cancer, but in children, where the parent has cancer, what trauma that might lead to in children. Think about the anxiety that might be as a result of that, and what might that lead to? What certain disorders that might lead to in young children. Now, to be fair, a housekeeper, Linda Wilcox, she came before Hoffman Pugh. She said that a lot of small children had difficulties with bedwetting. That's fine. But if you want my opinion, I don't have children. You might say, you don't know what you're talking about. You've never raised little children. You're absolutely right. I do have a house-trained dog. And I would say bedwetting is higher, or house wetting is higher on the scale of toilet training than poop management. Like, poop management is effectively the bottom rung. If a dog can't manage that, you've really got a problem. And let me put it this way, and I agree it's quite a crude example. I mean, people aren't animals. Animals aren't people. But if I somehow got my house dog trained only for it to mess all over the house, again, as an older dog, you would wonder what is going on. And I would have a word for that. It's a word that psychologists sometimes use, regression. And would it be unfair to look for some sort of cause for that deterioration? I do think that Patsy's cancer caused, in part, that regression. Now, in a fragmented approach to the Ramsey case, or in a too narrowly focused approach, JonBenet's doctor's visits may seem strange, but as Dr. Beuf said, I don't think it's excessive in the circumstances. What circumstances does he mean? I think he means the fact that these were small children living with a mother, a young mother, she was 36 when she was diagnosed, with stage 4 very serious cancer. Young children with a mother who couldn't really look after them for a period, who was critically ill for a period, whose appearance changed for a period. And so if you integrate the cancer aspect and you say, well, given those circumstances, this is absolutely normal, I wouldn't agree. I would say I think it is excessive. And if you add the other element, and we don't know it's true for a fact, there are several witnesses to this and we want to deal with that. We know it's possibly true. But if it is true, then this seems very excessive indeed. If you add the scatological aspect to the bedwetting aspect, then it does seem like we're going into another area. And it's certainly pretty unusual, isn't it? And think about what cancer is. It's about death. Think about what feces represent, death as well. And so we're going to deal with the narrative around this idea of regression in our next analysis. I'm not going to take it further than that. Bear in mind, when we deal with this really sensitive subject matter, essay, all of the rest, often these videos get demonetized. So if you do want to hit the thanks button to show your appreciation, I would appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.